Hey, what's up everyone? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we're looking at the Playmates TMNT Classics BEBOP figure. BEBOP and Rocksteady for this line have been highly anticipated. People have been psyched up to get them for quite a while. And while they are inherently good figures, there are definitely some things that really drive me nuts. Namely, the fact that they don't look like they did in the cartoon. They definitely have drawn inspiration from, and it says this on the package actually, that they're inspired by the 1988 cartoon. But they really don't match the turtles in their likeness to the actual series. That being said, they're still fairly decent figures. They're pretty cool, and I do recommend them. So let's take a look. On top of his base, he stands to the top of his mohawk 6 1/4, including the base, add another, 3/16 of an inch. And while we're here, let's look at this. The base, same as the other figures, the turtles themselves, except for the fact that there's no shading at all. These got a nice black wash. The ones from the actual turtles, they look awesome with that black wash. These don't have any black wash at all, so they don't match, so that's kind of a bummer. Alright, so we can also look at the height while we're here. I told you he was about 6 1/4. Leo is almost basically to the same height as his mohawk. So I think that for BEBOP and Rocksteady, they should have been bigger. They should be, I think, at least a head taller than the turtles. So that's kind of disappointing. They are much better scaled for the NECA figures, actually. He does come with his kind of drill gun accessory. There's no paint on it at all. It's molded in a marbly kind of metallic gray gunmetal plastic. Sculpt is pretty cool. It's very reminiscent of what it looked like in the cartoon and on the original figure, but it would have been nice to get a little bit of paint. There's no shading or anything throughout these guys, so don't expect that. The paints are fairly basic, but they are there. So as you can see, he's got the little silver parts in there. The belt's painted, the turtle shell's painted, the laces are done, and the details on the shoes are there. None of the spikes are painted though. I don't think that's just on my figure. I think that's how it is on all the figures. So that's a little bit of a bummer. The sculpt is pretty good. The details are there. I mean, there's nothing too detailed. I mean, there's no veins or anything popping out, but the head, the sculpt is really good, aside from the fact that it doesn't really match the original cartoon at all. It matches more of like a later series, I think, or it might have been a video game, but I think that design was used at some point. I could be crazy though, I'm not sure. But either way, the sculpt work is good, it's just not quite accurate. And then the pants have some wrinkles and things in them, so that's alright. Let's talk articulation. The head, it does move up and down a little bit, but not enough to really mention, and it swivels around that hole in his upper torso. So he can't really look to the side, he can only kind of look off to the distance. So it's not really ideal. It is technically a ball joint, so you can kind of force it to the side just a little bit, but it's not that useful. The shoulder pads are molded on. I mean, it's not all a solid mold, but they don't have a hinge. It is a soft kind of plastic, so you can kind of lift them up, but they don't really get in the way too much anyway. And the articulation for the shoulder is a standard ball hinge, so it works really well. It's a nice big ball hinge, so the sculpt looks pretty good with it. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. Can't get better than 90 degrees though, so that's kind of a waste. It swivels on both ends of that little wrist thing. None of the positions of it really line up properly with the sculpt of the muscles, so that's disappointing. And then the wrist swivels as well, and it does have a hinge. He can hold his gun in either hand, and since he has individually sculpted fingers, the trigger guard is not a problem. His ab crunch or diaphragm joint is virtually useless. It's very limited side to side. You can't ab crunch with it at all. It can't go side to side. I mean, you can't rock it or swivel it side to side. So it's very useless, or very limited, almost useless. It's very disappointing. Hips are standard ball pegs, just like the turtles. So they have decent range of motion. Nothing to write home about though. It's not very good. It's just okay, decent, nothing special. Double jointed knees, then an ankle swivel. The turtles had loads of articulation in their fingers and their toes and ankles and everything. These guys do not. It's just a swivel right there. And I want to point out, they didn't even paint the insides of his shoes. They only painted the outsides with those purple details. So these figures, while they are still decent figures, they're not actually bad or anything like that. They're disappointing in many little ways. Nothing hugely disappointing, but lots of little things throughout will probably leave you a little bit upset, but they're still worth the money, and I still do recommend them, and they still look good with the turtles, more or less. So go get them if you can. Pre-order them at Big Bad Toy Store, and you will have them very soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. In the meantime, keep collecting.